The Chargers wrapped up the last of their offseason activities last week with their mandatory minicamp, but there were two players in particular that stood out the most to head coach Brandon Staley.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and I want to wish all the Bolt dads out there a happy Father's Day. And as you guys are hearing this, everyone a happy Juneteenth as well. But we've been covering the Chargers for over 6 seasons together. We're heading into our 5th season as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen today. And to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. But David, you definitely want to do that right now because on Wednesday's show, we have the Chargers' Haley Elwood coming on the show, someone that has so many good connections inside that building and gets such an up close and personal look at this team. But we start today by talking about what Brandon Staley said last week about two players in particular, Jalen Guyton and him even coming along and special teams and not just as a wide receiver, and Nasir Adderley being one of the standouts at the Chargers mandatory minicamp, because if those guys can have an impact this year, that's going to be huge for this team. But we'll also talk about Justin Herbert and how he's going into year 3 and why he needs football, and also Austin Ekeler relishing the competition behind him as the alpha dog of the running back group and wondering who else can come up and do what he did and make a huge appearance, in these sessions, in these practices, in these preseason games, and maybe be the next Austin Ekeler to make the team as an undrafted free agent, or maybe one of these later round picks stepping up to really take a hold of one of those jobs. But today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. David, when we talk about these mandatory minicamps, though, the one thing we did get was some transparency from Brandon Staley in his final presser before we see the Chargers again in training camp. And that was two guys that he talked about. And I want to start with Jalen Guyton, who he said during the spring has really impressed him.
Yeah, I mean, that's music to my ears, Daniel. I am really happy to hear that because Jalen Guyton's a guy that we know what he brings to the table. We know it's the just unmitigated raw speed. I mean, it's that real speed that definitely plays. And for him, he just needs to be able to improve his game as an overall wide receiver. And it seems like in these offseason activities in minicamp here, he caught a couple of really deep touchdown passes and made a couple of really good plays from backup quarterback Chase Daniel. So you love to hear about that. That just goes to show you that Jalen Guyton understands this opportunity and he's coming in here ready to work, and he's ready to show everybody that he is going to be an integral member of this offense.
Yeah, and Brandon Staley said he was one of the guys that came off the top of his head. He said he's had a fantastic offseason, made a lot of big plays. I also said he came in physically just in great shape. He's moving great. Thought we were able to kind of move him around like you were saying. And that is something that is a really good sign for these coaches, right? Especially as you're trying to fight for this wide receiver 3 spot, because that just means this is getting even more interesting, because we thought pretty much for sure that Josh Palmer is coming for some of those snaps as the wide receiver 3 for this team. He kind of was that last year, but we were wondering if he was going to get more of a stranglehold on that position this year. And we'll talk about what Justin Herbert had to say about Josh Palmer later in the show. But for Jalen Guyton to be pushing him, right, and to be even fighting for more snaps this year, I think is a really good sign for this team. And one of the things they talked about him doing was earning it on special teams and finding a way to be an impact player in the kicking game, as Brandon Staley put it. And when he was asked about it, he said, speed, real speed. He's 4'3" and he's big. That's a big part of the gunner job, getting guys who can really run. We really challenged him to do that because if it's a good receiver, you have to be able to beat press coverage. That's just a natural part of your job. He also said he wanted him to have an extended career in the NFL, and that could be a big part of it. And as a guy who's, not scraping along the bottom of the wide receiver depth chart, but as a guy who's not potentially one of the top 3 options, that's super important, and it maybe does help the Chargers special teams, David.
Yeah, I mean, hey, he is one of the fastest guys on the team, if not the fastest guy on the team. So to get him on the special teams unit where he can really fly down the football field and try to make some plays as a gunner, I mean, that could only, improve the special teams unit. They wanted to get more athletic. They wanted to get faster. And Jalen Guyton can help them do that if he is able to take to this. And hey, Jalen Guyton might have to, look at this as an opportunity to say, hey, if I go out here and I kill special teams, that's going to help me stay in the league. And that's also going to prove to the coaching staff that they can trust me with whatever task that they want to give me, that I'm going to go and I'm going to get it full on. I'm going to put all of myself into it and I'm going to excel doing it. So I think that's going to show the coaching staff that he's ready to go. And that's going to help him when he gets on the field as a wide receiver. If he proves those opportunities on special teams, he's going to get more opportunities on the field, hopefully catching those deep passes from Justin Herbert.
Yeah, and we all know he can do that. We don't know if he can do the special teams part of it yet. I mean, you see why it fits, because he does have to get off press, and maybe working on that helps him just in general as a wide receiver, which I think they think it will. But the other thing is you have to be able to tackle, and they're not going to be able to find that out right now, and that is a big part of
Got to
that.
get the pads on.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you get some of these special teams aces that we've seen, like a Kasim Osgood, right? He was technically a receiver, but really
he was a beast.
A standout ace as a special teams player and made a lot of impact plays for the team. And the Chargers, especially on the punt team last year, just didn't get enough out of that unit. Not enough balls, damned in good areas. Not enough balls that were, not blocked. So, I mean, there's a lot of things they have to work on. But having a better gunner, I think, is something that is going to help. And we all know how big of an impact the special teams part of that receiver room played last season when you see someone like Tyron Johnson get cut, right? Because he wasn't bringing value there. Neither was Jalen Guyton at that part, but he kind of won that position. And now this year, they want him to add to his game a little bit, and maybe he could be an impact player. But the other player that stood out, which I think is important, David, is Nasir Adderley stood out. And what he said was, I think that Nasir has had, I would say, it's the same impact on defense. Derwin James didn't go full speed in the 7-on-7, but I think Nas really showed up. He was our most productive guy in the spring in the secondary. I think that those two guys for sure kind of stood out to me, him and Jalen Guyton, and that prepared me well. They're in great shape physically and mentally. They've been sharp. I thought they both had quality springs. And David, I mean, we've been kind of on this train for a while, but we've been on it going into other seasons as well, so it's kind of tough. But it's hard not to get excited because we know kind of how close Nasir Adderley has been. He is coming off of his best season, and it seems like things may be starting to click.
No, it's just nice. It just seems like that work that he put in last year, it's starting to matriculate. It's starting to show itself, and it's taking it through a full season from him. He really showed and really progressed well, got more aggressive, and that definitely played into him improving his game. And if that continues this season, it could really click. And if it does, he could really turn into the player we all saw coming in that had so much potential, that could be the guy that could be your deep safety, that could be your last line of defense kind of defender, a guy that you trust. He's really getting close. And if he puts it all together, they could really have that fantastic safety duo, Derwin James, Nasir Adderley out, back there doing crazy things like we always thought they would.
Absolutely. I mean, also, I still don't forget when Nasir Adderley came in as a rookie and said, me and Derwin James are going to be the best tandem safeties in the league, right? Like he was never short on confidence. An injury that takes pretty much your whole season, and the way it's kind of played out can change some of those things, but seems like he's still there. Seems like he's making plays early on, which is just, I think, a real X factor for this defense, because everyone knows how much JC Jackson's going to improve the team and Khalil Mack's going to improve the team, and Sebastian Joseph Day. We don't know what to expect from Nasir Adderley. We don't know how much better he can be than the version that we saw last year. We do know he's going to have a lot more talent around him, but I'm also still thinking about if I think Jalen Guyton's easily the fastest guy on this team. I mean, you said it, and now I just can't stop thinking about it. I mean, I think it's
who else is it?
I mean, him and JT Woods are going to race for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think him and Michael Davis are going to race for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I think both of those guys, I mean, Tavon Campbell could be a guy that has something to say about it too. And none of those guys are as good as Nasir Adderley with the ball in his hands, which is the other thing. If he is able
to, for sure,
they could get a couple of defensive scores this year. That would be just great. It's like, hey, Justin, not only we're getting off the field more, but hey, take a load off. We'll score.
We'll take care of this. We can do both.
I just think it's great, though. And it's hard, though, because we've had the hype before. Nasir Adderley has had the hype before. He still has to go out there and do it. But these are guys that, if they are able to find it, it's going to mean something for this team, because both could have a significant roles with this team. And so could Josh Palmer. And Justin Herbert is very excited about him. And it seems like the wide receiver 3 battle could be heating up a little. But, I mean, with Justin Herbert, he basically just loves football, right? And he just is going to find any way to be on the football field, even when he's supposed to be on vacation. So we're going to get into that. But it is nice to see these two young guys getting moments out there and hopefully taking that next step, because that's the thing you can never really project. But if you guys want to make a moment special with jewelry, the one place you go to is BlueNile.com. It's the only place I go to for all my jewelry needs. Obviously, I had a few since I'm getting married next month in July. But at Blue Nile, you can celebrate all of life's special moments, from creating the custom engagement ring of your dreams to gifting a classic and timeless jewelry piece, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. Whether you're ready to pop the question or celebrating one of life's milestone moments, find jewelry as unique as her with modern convenience and online shopping at BlueNile.com. Build the engagement ring of your dreams or celebrate life's special moments with fine jewelry. And no matter what you're looking for, Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7. So make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners will get $50 off of purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings. Make sure you use the promo code LOCKEDON. That's promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, one word. And every order is insured. It ships free, and it arrives in a discreet package that won't give away what's inside. So shop stress-free and shop at BlueNile.com today. All right, David. Well, when Justin Herbert gets on the microphone, it used to not mean too much because he pretty much always knew what he was going to say.
My name is Justin Herbert.
Yeah. He had the, quarterback speak, the robo quarterback. He had that down. He's not going to make any waves, which can be a good thing. And I think for the team, it's like you never want your quarterback making waves, right? And you'd much rather him be very, very boring.
Yes.
But I really like some of the things that he had to say in his final press conference of minicamp. But I do have to tell you guys, that especially the basketball fans out there, that the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft starts on June 16th with over 50 insiders. Nothing equals the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft. So make sure you guys are checking that out with all of the experts. The Odyssey Insiders, and the first pick is June 16th. So follow that wherever you get your podcast from, the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft. But another guy who's pretty good at basketball, Justin Herbert, who might not be allowed to play basketball anymore because he went viral dunking on kids in a gym. And he seemed pretty upset about that, but I think he'll probably
an awesome clip.
Oh, it's a great clip. And I think when he goes to Eugene, he'll be in Oregon, he'll be able to find where he's from, some places that he can do it a little bit more low key, because I think he's still going to be out there jamming on kids. I just don't know if we're going to see it anymore. and that's sad. But one of the things that kind of went viral, kind of a clip and a soundbite and a quote that I saw all over Twitter, was Justin Herbert saying, "I need football." And what he was talking about is throwing himself into film study, especially in the offseason, when this is your one time to relax, right? And Austin Eckler talked about kind of trying to balance both of those things while you're in the NFL and missing the voluntary OTAs that Austin Eckler missed. But for Justin Herbert, it's just like watching film and doing like more football stuff because he's such a football dude. And what he said is, "I appreciate watching film. I think it's the great thing about football for me is I need football. I love waking up and going to work, lifting, running, throwing, and watching film. I think too much off time can be kind of a burden to me sometimes, so I always look forward to having stuff to do, whether it's just throwing to the guys or being out there at OTAs." And that is just such a Justin Herbert answer, David. I mean, the dude just wants to be out there playing football, and he said it's like kind of a burden to have all of this off time. He said he's going to enjoy going home to his friends and things like that in Eugene, Oregon, and seeing his family and spending that time. But he said he likes, just waking up, eating, breathing, sleeping football. He said the mandatory minicamp was kind of like his vacation.
Yeah, I was going to say, a reporter asked him, "Hey, are you going to take vacation?" He's like, "I feel like I'm on vacation right now." When you go on vacation, you're trying to get away from something.
What a psycho.
And I'm never trying to get away from football. So, yeah, hey, that's the kind of psycho that you want playing starting quarterback for your franchise, the guy that literally eats, sleeps, and breathes football at all times. That is clearly Justin Herbert. And there's nothing fake about what he says. It's all real. That's just who he is. So you love that out of your starting quarterback, Justin Herbert. I said it on a podcast that I guest starred on a couple days ago. You're starting to get it's the Thunder Down Under podcast. Actually, it's out of Australia. Fantastic dudes. But I said Justin Herbert. You're starting to get a little bit more from him. You're starting to get a little more personality.
Oh, yeah.
You're starting to get a little bit more of
just
who
a
he
tiny
is.
bit.
Tiny bit. And it's nice. It's nice to get to know the person Justin Herbert, other than just the football player Justin Herbert.
I mean, thank God we just don't have the sad Justin Herbert who is coming out, in his rookie season with Anthony Lynn and just having them both repeat over and over again. There was miscommunications, right? It's come a long way since those days. But I really like kind of seeing a little bit more, like
Yeah.
peeling another layer of the onion back. Like I've said before, like Tom Brady's just now opening up, right? So we're not ever
Yeah.
going to get a ton, but at least we don't have like sad crying Michael Jordan face, Justin Herbert out there just being super sad and having to kind of read from the speech. It seemed like, some after some of those games. But one of
Yeah.
the things he also talked about a lot was just his progression from last year to this year. And he's talked about that throughout the offseason and just picking up where the offense left off, which was, a top 5 offense by a lot of metrics last season. And now it's football 202, David, which I know is something that you have talked about before. You really like that kind of comment because I think it really kind of puts into perspective where this team is at offensively. Besides some of the newer guys, they're coming into this, picking up where they left off. And one of those things that they're doing in that situation is when he was asked about how he's going to improve, one of the things he brought up was the cadence, right? And last year, they're trying to get everything down. This year, they have everything down. So now they're not just worried about getting the play call out. They could run a hard count. It's not just, hey, this play on one. They're finding these little nuances and that now he can focus on a little bit more because of how experienced he's been now in this offense.
Yeah, and I think there were several situations last season where you're like, man, why didn't we get a hard count out there? Or why didn't we get
100%.
more results
Yeah.
from a hard count out there?
Good call.
And maybe this is the reason why. It's because he just wasn't there in the maturation process of understanding the offense. Now he is, and it even kind of changed the way that he looks at film. He's able to pick up on more cues and be able to see more things, like where are the linebackers at in the formation, like where are your defensive backs and how are they shading? What is their balance like?
And their
He's able
leverage,
to,
yeah.
their leverage. Excuse me. They're able to pick up on more. He's able to pick up on more of these cues to where he can go out there and really execute the best play possible for the offense.
Yeah, and I mean, Daniel Popper had brought up those good plays that Jalen Guyton had made. Another thing that Daniel Popper brought up about Justin Herbert is just like, hey, but that was all him kind of processing before because he was saying, as a rookie, I was just trying to catch up. Last year, I'm trying to learn the offense. Like, if that was all him just trying to adjust and learning on the fly and, got it by the seat of his pants, and now this year he's feeling more stable for the dude who already had the lowest percentage of turnover-worthy throws in the NFL last year.
5,000 passing yards, 40 plus
100%.
touchdowns.
And that's with the 15 touchdowns. That's something that always gets brought up. You have to go back and watch all of those interceptions. I mean, 15 interceptions last year. The reason I'm not worried about it, go back and watch them. So many fluky things, receivers falling down, tip balls. And I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but there's a reason why his turnover-worthy throw percentage was the lowest in the NFL. It's because some of those weren't on him. And they were
I remember an interception that what Trayvon Diggs did with the Cowboys in week 2. Like, that was ridiculous. It was miraculous. The chances of that interception happening is probably less than 10%. As far as
when you have like the
happening
Jared
again.
Cook, not running the full route, being on different pages, like that stuff that comes down too.
There's
So
several of
anyways,
those
that's just
examples.
for the argument that's out there because a lot of people have talked about that specifically. But he's growing and he's learning more and he should be even better, which is a scary thought for the rest of the league. But he also said Josh Palmer should be a lot better this year. The second-year wide receiver who was, borderline wide receiver 3 last year and obviously has some big competition with Jalen Guyton. When he was talking about that, though, he said he's a guy that came in really early last year. He picked up the offense pretty easily, but this year it's a different Josh Palmer out there. He picked up there. He knows exactly what he's doing now. We've thrown a bunch after practice. I feel comfortable with him. I trust him. Well, at least I hope that he trusts me as well. And that is such a big thing, being on the same page as your quarterback. But he is a guy, David, that I think who's also primed, right? If he can take that wide receiver spot and get on the field as wide receiver 3, who could have a big impact for this offense.
I mean, it's just so hard to kind of figure out how much he's going to be on the field because he and Jalen Guyton do fundamentally different things at the wide receiver position.
Yeah.
But you love the fact that you have Josh Palmer in that room because God forbid if Keenan Allen or Mike Williams go down, for a little bit, you feel very good that he's going to be able to step in and be able to provide very good production for them in their stead. So that's why I love love Josh Palmer because he has that confidence and you see the work ethic. You saw it from day one. So he's going to be ready for whatever opportunities are thrown his way and he's going to go out there and he's going to ball out.
Yeah, and he's a really good separator. He had the best hands on the team last year and like
one drop, right?
One drop. He's just someone that you can see the skill set. It is a little bit more redundant with Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams to some extent, but he's a really solid player who surprised me in year 1, and especially as a guy who came in at a 3rd-round pick. Him with Justin Herbert, I mean, that could be something special that's growing, and maybe we see kind of the roots of that more this season. But I like hearing what Justin Herbert had to say because I do think that with him, like, you trust in what he's saying now a little more. It does seem a little bit more genuine, but also that, like, he made such a big leap from year 1 to year 2. There's no reason to think he can't make that same leap from year 2 to year 3. But if you think that, there is a place you can go put your money where your mouth is, and that's betonline.net, where you can bet for Justin Herbert, who's no longer the MVP at betonline.net. So that means better odds on it than the NFL futures on betonline.net, because that is the official betting sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network in the Locked On Chargers podcast. And they always make it fun too. I mean, I had a lot of fun betting on the Warriors and winning money that way in the NBA Finals, but there's also the Stanley Cup Finals going on right now. Hockey is crazy. The playoffs are nuts. Make sure you guys are getting in on that action. But it's not just that. It's UFC. It's baseball. It's anything that you can think of. You even have live in-game betting where you can change your fortune and not be stuck with maybe the dumb bet you made earlier on in the night. But I do love that BetOnline always has the best odds, lines, and props that you guys are going to find out there. So make sure you head to the website or use your mobile device today to learn more about it at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, David, well, there's Austin Ekeler, who also talked a little bit about some of the things that have gone down this offseason. One in particular was him not being there for some of it, right? And he was the only player, I believe the only player that didn't show up to any of the voluntary mini camps, right?
Well, Jerry Tillery missed some time too.
Sure, but he ended up showing up with Joey Bosa later on.
Yeah, later
Austin
on.
Ekeler didn't attend any of them, I believe, any of the voluntary ones.
Right.
He showed up
correct.
for the mandatory minicamp.
Yeah.
And I've seen him take some heat, right? And I do understand that from a fan's perspective. It's like, hey, go be out there with your team. But you also have to remember, too, it's voluntary for a reason, right? And it is cool to see Joey Bosa deciding he is going to voluntarily be there, right? And then that does mean a lot. Having all those dudes show up does mean something. But Austin Ekeler had a very interesting answer as to why he didn't show up, David, that I think is important. And what he said is, it's important to understand that during the NFL season, the NFL is getting the most out of you as it can. It's getting your time, it's getting your mental, it's getting your physical body, it's getting everything out of you. When the offseason comes, my mindset is flipping the switch. Now I'm trying to get everything out of the NFL by using the connections, by using my status on the team, using my connections in fantasy football, and all the hype that is built up. When I'm going to these practices and going 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock, paraphrasing now, I'm missing out on some of those opportunities. And I think, David, especially for someone like him, you know he's going to come in great shape, right? He's documenting pretty much all of it anyways, but you're not worried about him slacking off during the offseason at all. He's going to do it on his own time, but I think at this point he's earned the pedigree, right? He's earned the trust of this team too. He'll come in, he'll be in shape, he'll be ready to go. And for him, someone who's a running back, right? A short shelf life in the NFL, someone who is a streamer, someone who likes to do all the things Austin Ekeler likes to do to maximize his brand. I totally get it. And I understand those who don't show up and who do, but at least for this, you're seeing he's doing it for the right reason. So I have no problem with it.
Oh, yeah, no problem at all. All love for Austin Ekeler, obviously, being the first player to ever be on the Locked On Chargers podcast.
That's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but for Austin Ekeler, you also have to look at the context of the position that he's playing and how he has carried himself in his NFL career. He's been there, he's done that, he's excelled at a very high level. He has nothing to prove to anyone. And he even said, hey, there's an appropriate time to show up and be here with your teammates and, be able to create those bonds, and you have to earn the trust of the coaching staff. He said, hey, if you're a young player, you better be here. You better, be here absorbing all the information.
The benefits for the younger guys.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's not in that situation. He's already done it. He has that trust of the coaching staff. They know what he's going to do when he shows up. So you can't fault the guy for going out there and trying to use his platform and use his connections to be able to try to think about life after football, because he plays one of the most physically demanding positions on the football field. And like you said, the shelf life is short. You never know what's going to happen. So for him, he's trying to make sure that when, he is done playing the game, and he said he wants to play the game for a long time, that he has other things going on that can continue to improve that revenue stream.
Yeah, and I was just impressed with his honesty with that, because
Absolutely.
he's making really good points. He's out there wheeling and dealing, making himself money, building up his future as a guy who had to grind into the league as an undrafted free agent. The other thing he's always super open about, and has been the last couple of years, is, but I also want someone else to do it with. And he asked that again, and you don't see that,
no.
Hey, come for me, come push me, right? You just don't see that. He wants somebody to come in and take some of his carries. He's the alpha dog. Come take them away. But when he was asked about it, he was saying that the wear and tear of being in the league for 6 years takes its toll, right? He said it starts to build. I've been an advocate on the team of being able to split reps that's kind of my upbringing in this league. I was mainly a special teams guy, and then when I did get brought up, basically I was splitting reps with Melvin Gordon because that is how he came in, and he's 100% right. I mean, that's the thing is if you want to keep getting the same Austin Eckler that you're getting, obviously you want him on the field as much as you possibly can, but to get the most out of him, to keep him fresh, to keep him as dynamic as we've seen him, and to try to keep him on the field for 17 games, he needs a backup running back to step up in RB2, and he's out here basically screaming it from the mountaintops.
And to be clear, he's not saying, hey, I'm going to give you guys some reps and, everything's going to be great. He said, no, you need to come and take these reps from me. You need to earn them. And that's exactly what somebody needs to do. The Chargers have cycled through so many different guys in that position, and it just doesn't seem like there's been anybody to just grab that position and take it and earn it. So there's a new candidate now. It's Isaiah Spiller, obviously your 4th round pick from this past year's draft. So we'll see if he is going to be able to take that opportunity. And by all accounts, he's going to be given the chance to do that. And obviously, there's going to be some competition, as there should be. With Joshua Kelly and Larry Roundtree, who was drafted last year, those guys are going to have to try to earn their spot. And if it's for RB2 or RB3, who knows? They're going to have to figure that out in training camp. But we all know if we want to keep Austin Eckler on the field, we need somebody that not only can go out there and carry the rock, we need a guy that can go out there and make plays and keep up the production while Austin Eckler is on the sideline.
Yeah, and he literally said, I want these guys to come challenge me. Like, let's go. Bring it. Come on. Come earn some reps. And
I love it.
He also said he's going to be bringing the energy as well. Like, he said, hey, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to bring the energy, but it's up to one of these young guys to come in and take it. And yeah, RB2, I mean, I know we've kind of crowned Isaiah Spiller. Yeah. I mean, it's still what makes the most sense to me just because I think he's a different kind of prospect than the other 2 guys who were drafted. I mean, 3 running backs drafted 3 consecutive years, right?
Yep.
4th rounder later. Isaiah Spiller is built a little bit different, I think, than the rest of those guys. And I think he fits with what the Chargers want to do, obviously. That's why they drafted him. But for the other 2 guys, I mean, they still could be kind of, fighting for a roster spot at some point. We don't know if the Chargers are going to keep 4 running backs when they're going into things this year, or maybe a 4th running back is actually a fullback, right? We don't know how the roster construction is going to play out. And it could mean one of Josh Kelly or Larry Roundtree. I have a hard time believing that Isaiah Spiller is in any trouble to not make the roster. But one of the things that Austin Eckler said is like, hey, this is what I had to do. And he said, that's the same as it was for me, right? I got an opportunity. I started making plays here and there. And they were like, oh, maybe Austin can play a little bit. It's the same thing that I want to see from these guys. So, like, even though we're talking about Josh Kelly, Larry Roundtree, one of those guys, coming and taking some of those reps, or maybe even just securing the RB3 spot on the team. But maybe you start looking at guys like Letty Brown, undrafted free agent, or Kevin Marks Jr., an undrafted free agent, and maybe they're the next Austin Eckler, because we know this team does take seriously the undrafted guys that they bring in, and they're willing, if you're able to go out there and make plays in training camp in the preseason, that they'll keep you around potentially.
The blueprint is there, Daniel. The blueprint is there, and they have somebody that's at their position that has already proven that they can go from undrafted to NFL superstar if you put in the work and the time and you attach yourself to those coaching staff's hip and you try to figure out every single thing you can do to improve your chances of earning a spot on a roster. And you're going to have to earn a spot on this roster because this one is one of the better rosters in the NFL and there is not many spots available, but you can do it. And there's a guy in your room that has proven it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no better example of that. And it used to kind of be the same way with like Adrian Phillips, right? Where it's just like the model of persistency, right? Just the guy kept coming back, kept getting cut, and made his way onto the team. And there's so many undrafted free agents. That's been such a big story with this team, is just them finding these undrafted free agents to fill in the cracks of the roster. And it's worked out so well for them. And you need that to happen when you got the contracts like Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, right? And as Derwin James contract comes up and Justin Herbert contract comes up, this is how you stay competitive, and this is how you kind of get an edge on some other teams when you're able to find cheap guys that are going to come in through 2 or 3 year deals, right? That you're going to have supremely on the cheap that can come in and have an impact. And there's been so many: Malcolm Floyd, Antonio Gates, Jaleel Adai. I mean, there's been so many guys that they've found ways to use coming in as undrafted free agents who have had really long careers in the NFL and with the Chargers specifically. But so hard not to root for Austin Eckler. Like, the dude is not afraid of your fantasy football expectations. He's not afraid of your questions about
He
why he's not
welcomes
showing
it
up for the
all.
OTAs. The dude's just a super good dude, and I'm
Yeah.
happy that he's, taking the time to put in time in his community with his foundation and do all the cool things he's been able to do outside of football, and I understand why he wasn't at OTAs, but it is still exciting, all the guys that did show up, because it still does kind of feel like there's something special and something different going on this year with this team after all of these additions. And I can't wait to talk to Haley Elwood about it on Wednesday, David. And you guys aren't going to want to miss that. Haley Elwood coming on the show this Wednesday to talk Chargers this special season and much more, to make sure you don't miss it. Go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also follow the show for free on all platforms, always keeping it totally free for you guys. That's something that's very important for us, is to keep the show free. And that's why we have ads and do some of the things that we do. It's so we can always be free and always be available for you guys and give you that daily Chargers content. And we love bringing it to you guys. That's the most important part. And thank you guys so much for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, though, one of the best, highly recommended podcasts I would give you guys is the Locked On NFL show. That is the one show I go to get up to date with everything going on throughout the week. There's different experts that take it over every day and different topics. And I love keeping up with the rest of the NFL that way, because it's easy to get stuck in my Chargers bubble. But thank you guys for coming on to this show, because the Chargers are the team we all want to talk about and the best team out there right now. So if you guys want to keep up with the show, make sure you guys are following all of our social media as well. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and David Droegemeier on Twitter at DroTalkSD. We post the show to both of our accounts every day and our at Locked On LAC show Twitter page. You can also find our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, and you can find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers. We will be getting back to Fan Mail Friday this week. If you guys want to get your questions in, you can hit us up anywhere, even in the YouTube comments, Instagram DMs, or on the post that we'll put out on Twitter. You can also call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 with your questions. Trying to keep them short and sweet. Be more likely to get on the show. But Haley Elwood coming on the show this Wednesday. Make sure you guys are back here for that. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.